So I'm pleased to introduce Malcolm Koppel, who is going to start us off.
Hi, everybody. I want to start by talking a little bit about the process that we use to put the brief together. Adam Sutkus and I have been working on community engagement for many years, but we thought that what would be of most service to this audience would be to hear from the folks who are doing it on the ground in the realignment area. And so that's how we organized our work with a group of interviews, and you can see the interviewees listed in the brief, to get people's perspectives on why community engagement, what they get out of it, and how they're doing it. And we really think that those voices are the most important, and so thrilled to have Scott and Linda here with us. Just as background, kind of what we mean by community engagement for this purposes is the community is basically defined as people who live and work in the county, and engagement is involving those people and organizations in kind of everything from education through getting feedback and input, and ultimately to working together on this work. I should say that the brief is oriented primarily to an audience of people, county staff. We understand that there's a wide variety of folks on the webinar today, which is great. And so hopefully we'll hear some other perspectives as well. The community that we're talking about, as I said, it can be varied. It can include anybody who can provide information or assistance or other resources to the realignment process. It includes the people who have been incarcerated as well as their families. It can include businesses in the area, other residents who are interested in the issue or have some stake in it. And it includes the community-based organizations who provide the services. And because it is broadly defined, and we think that kind of the way to be most successful with community engagement is to engage as broadly as possible, the results should be also varied. There should be a lot that can come out of it, including a better understanding of the people that counties are trying to serve, some information about programs, what works and what doesn't work, and support for if the engagement is truly with the community as a partner, what comes out of that can be more strongly supported, and the community can be a valuable partner in policies, getting policies across, and also in implementing programs. I should say that again, the community is broad and defined broadly, so that also means that the community is not a monolith. There are a number of voices in the community and a number of resources, a number of ways that people and institutions can be involved, and so it can be a complex process. Next slide. So before I turn it over to Linda and Scott, I want to say kind of just one of the first questions we asked in our interviews was why? Why community engagement? And we got a variety of comments, but it kind of boiled down to three things. And the people that we talked to are people who are using community engagement in their work and really see the community as a partner. So what we heard is that engaging the community can help the community understand what you're trying to do. The community members can also be part of the solution, providing useful input that you wouldn't get otherwise, and also all the way through to program implementation, co-creating programs and supporting on that end. And then if the process is crafted with the community as a partner, then you'll broaden the support for what comes out of it as well. But I'd like to turn it over to Linda first and hear your perspective.
Well, good morning, or good midday, I suppose, summer afternoon. I'm really happy to be here and happy to talk about community engagement, happy to talk about the subject matter because I've experienced it certainly from a local perspective and now from a statewide perspective. And in terms of what I think works for the state of California, it cannot be done, frankly, without community engagement. And it is the administration's focus that communities and counties have subsidiarity to the states and are allowed to interject into their justice system the culture of their counties. I'm happy to report that as we move from county to county to county, that the various engagement takes different shapes and forms, but each of those shapes and forms benefits that county as they move forward in this process that's now 3.5 years old. We're calling realignment. But to move back in history just a bit, I think we have to start from the perspective of a very large system trying to reckon with a justice system that, for all intensive purposes, had enormous problems. And I'm a big believer that breaking those problems into small cohorts and managing them from the perspective of the community is a better fit. And I think the governor shares that emphasis. I've spent a number of days traveling with the governor from county to county and highlighting certainly issues in each county, but also highlighting programs that work in counties. And the BSCC, beyond the governor's trips, has also engaged in traveling from county to county to highlight programs and to be able to present on a statewide basis what works, what programs are making a difference. And what we're seeing is certainly the engagement of the CCP with various CBOs, with the religious community, with various stakeholders in their community produces a better product. I'm amazed at the diversity across the state in the engagement. I'm amazed at programs anywhere from, teaching in a custody setting and getting people to get their GED or graduating from high school, all the way to being out of custody and engaging people in practices in terms of job readiness and, really the community wrapping their arms around these offenders and making them ready to live that pro-social life we're hoping for. That doesn't happen in big systems. And so with that said, it is a practice that is supported by the administration. It is one that the BSCC is doing their best to highlight. I'd ask anybody on this call to be your best advertisement or come to us and tell us what program you had that you think we should come visit and highlight. The best we can do for the various counties is to give them a look at what's working county over county, because it is diverse and people have utilized the best they have in their county to move forward the agenda of keeping our stakeholders, our offenders, out of the criminal justice system. And I'll leave it at that right now.
Thank you, Linda. Scott, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I mean, Linda covered a lot of ground there. That was really great. So I'm a former probation chief, worked in the probation department in Santa Cruz for many years, and during that time was involved, I guess my perspective on community collaboration also was informed by my experiences with the juvenile detention reform initiative. And now I'm a consultant with California Forward, and we're working on a cross-system change effort in criminal justice. And I think in sort of framing my little piece of this, I'll start with why is community engagement important. And I would start by saying that, crimes happen in communities, and they happen to communities. And so communities have a big stake in the process to begin with. And second, ideally, the solutions to crime have to be co-owned by not just formal system folks, but also by the community. And so engaging the community allows you to bring them on as a partner. And your solutions, I think, as Linda mentioned, are going to be better to the extent that you're able to engage the community. And there's a lot of goodwill in the community, so why not engage the goodwill of the community to become a partner? Another reason is that you're going to have better impact to the extent that you have, from an old probation officer perspective, I was only as good as the help that I could enlist to get the work done. And the caseloads in probation were never where I wanted them to be, and I imagine they still aren't. And so even with a well-resourced probation department, you need others to help you. Another point is that to the extent that you've engaged the community and you've engaged partners where crime occurs, that's going to lead to more sustainable change. So if I always saw it as a probation officer, part of my role was to engage the community in a way that would form sort of new relationships and new ways of working that at the end of the day, when the individual gets off probation, ideally there'd be the pro-social supports and connections in that community to keep things moving in the right direction. Now post-realignment, the pressures are greater than they ever were in localities, and we need those partners to come and help us. From a sort of probation officer, sort of chief perspective, who had to go to budgets, one thing that I experienced when I had partnerships, community partners, they would be there at budget hearings supporting the work of our department. And when I think back on probation, 30 years ago, we sort of didn't focus on that piece as much as we did sort of the community-based organizations, nonprofits, the cross-system partners that would, focus on jobs, workforce development. Those things those connections weren't as strong as our law enforcement partnerships. And to really do this work well, we have to maintain that balance of compliance, control, law enforcement balance with the assistance that we offer. And I think to the extent that we get better at bringing those other community partnerships, we're able to have a more robust, nuanced approach in how we work with offenders. Not just offenders, that's victims, it includes families. So the other maybe last comment that I would say is that the communities also will tell you in ways that we might miss what the needs are. And when you bring those partners in And sometimes this can be hard, and it's not always easy, because particularly when community members have felt they've been shut out of the community justice or the criminal justice system, there might be a lot of feelings that they bring to the table. And I can tell you that the work in Santa Cruz, initially it took some work, it took some patience and time to really engage the community in a meaningful way. And that started with listening to them about what their needs were and what the issues were, what the gaps were, what we were doing well, and what we were doing poorly. So those are just a few points, and I think I'll stop there and then turn back to the presenters, and certainly can answer questions if any are directed towards me.
Thank you, Scott. We look forward to hearing more from you and Linda later in the session as we continue the conversation. The first question that we asked our interviewees was why. The second one was how. And we heard a lot of interesting approaches to engaging the community. Linda mentioned that there is a great diversity of ways to engage, and that's a good thing. I think probably one approach that kind of crosses all of those, that incorporates all of those tools is the attitude that that county staff brings to the engagement. Linda and Scott spoke a little bit to that, but kind of seeing the community as a partner and really appreciating the value of what the community can bring to the table. That's not only a good practice in community engagement, it's not only a good thing to do, but it will generate better results. And there are lots of different processes that you can use, and we will talk about them. But the attitude is really fundamental and important to this process. Scott talked about the communities have a big stake in this issue. They do, and understanding and appreciating that is an important part of the work. Another thing to keep in mind that we heard from folks is this is relationship building, and just like any good relationship, there's some good rules to follow. Be honest, mean what you say, be accountable, and be transparent, so that if you are kind of showing up in the community engagement process, being clear about what you can do and what you can't do, you'll get more out of it. And the more that you can kind of explain what your goals are, again, what your constraints are, and your thinking process, the more you'll get out of it. And then another point, and Scott also touched on this, is that in order to have the sustainable change that we hope that community engagement can bring to not only the particular process of realignment, but sustainable, kind of change in the county, that takes time. Again, we're talking about relationship building. That takes time. That takes energy. So in any community engagement process, it's important to build in that time, and especially as early on as possible. So it starts with engaging the community while you're thinking about things. Continues as you come to some conclusions and you get feedback, and then there's also a whole phase of community engagement that can happen in the implementation phase. So time and keeping the time and energy required in mind is important, and there's also some understanding that takes resources, not just your resources, but the resources of the members of the community that you're trying to engage. I think that, and I think Scott and Linda said this, that people do, they have a big stake. They understand that they're part of this process, and there will be a willingness to engage, but even those who are willing to engage may need some support to take the time off from work or whatever in order to be a helpful part of the process. So those are the approaches. I'm going to turn over to Adam to talk about the tools.
Thanks. Thanks, Malcolm. So how do you go about actually doing this? And I look forward during our Q&A session to hearing from more from Scott and Linda, but also from everyone else on the phone who's dialed into the webinar. But a quick summary of some of the ways to go about doing this, tools and techniques for your reference and consideration to keep in mind as you're thinking about doing this perhaps at your local level, are several at a general and high level to keep in mind. One, and I'll run through several of them, the advisory council approach is always a good one. It allows a representation from many different stakeholders. It ensures that you can target specific participants in different key groups that you really want to have part of the process and make sure they have a voice. And you can plan that out in advance and make sure that these key stakeholders, these key representative groups have a chance to participate and engage with you and creates a long-standing and potentially endearing group to be able to consistently give you feedback. Moving on to something that's more specific to public writ large in terms of interested parties or public as a whole, the town hall meeting approach is certainly one to consider. This especially allows you to engage with traditionally underserved communities and organizations or community sectors that don't normally take part in your process, but this would allow you to engage with those particular groups. And it allows also a wider sector to come together to be able to help with engagement overall and help with education in the town hall format. You can have one or you could have a series. They also can be applied geographically around your area to target specific sectors of your community that may not normally be ones that venture out to go to a particular event to learn about, in this case, realignment that's going on in the region. Something to consider is bringing into play a neutral facilitator to help with these engagement processes. There are some advantages to do that. A couple are that, one, as a convener, speaking if you are, say, a local government, it allows you to be more of a participant. You don't have to worry about being the caller of the meeting, worrying about time frames, worrying about how the flow of a meeting is going. It allows someone else to take that responsibility, and you can participate along with other key groups with a particular event. It allows also for one person to ensure that basic ground rules, discussion, and conversation and input that comes through a particular event, whether it's an advisory council or town hall meeting or some other venue, to make sure that no one person dominates the discussion. They're seen as a neutral, therefore favoritism is easy, but you can be dispelled in terms of someone who's actually running the meeting with everybody's interest in mind, not having a particular specific point of view in the room. Work groups or task forces are also subtopics in a way of an advisory council, but it does allow the true participation of particular sectors in a community that really have a specific interest that you can tap into. And it helps, and I think Scott mentioned this earlier, the issue of being able to leverage interests and really take advantage of the energy and involvement with different groups or sectors within your geographic area and allow them to participate and allow them to help you get where you need to go. And it builds that support and builds that that active participation that it can be so valuable down the road. It also helps with those relationships, as Malcolm discussed. So it becomes a real focused attention on particular key areas that can then roll up into, say, an advisory council or a larger entity to report back to the community at large. A couple of other last things to mention to consider as you're moving forward, and again, would love to hear from anybody on the phone in a moment. But the use of data is always very good in these forums. It's a great way for this field is one that certainly uses a lot of data and has studied a lot of trends and themes in statistical analysis of progress, incarceration rates, and recidivism rates. So it's a great way to bring the information to a meeting, to a forum, advisory committee, or public town hall meeting to report back on progress. But data can also be a double-edged sword. It can also be confusing. So when putting this forward, as long as it's communicated in a user-friendly format, then that can be something that's very useful. And lastly, a tool to highlight that we all mentioned in this report that we heard from many of you that actually was used in the field is hiring a liaison who's embedded in the process to help with any one of these techniques to engage with the public and community-based groups. Someone who's trusted from the inside, who's participated before, who can help get an organization moving, be able to address certain points of view, but someone who brings that insider's view, who has the trust of different sectors, can certainly help jumpstart and allow the communication and trust in a process to continue in a very positive way. So that would be someone, whether paid or unpaid, is certainly, there are different ways to address it, but it's certainly a nice way to reach down into a community and bring them to the table and use someone of their own to approach issues peer-to-peer. Lastly, before we go to Q&A, I'll be giving it back to the moderator, is some other things to keep in mind as we roll forward with this process. When you consider any one of these activities, and some of them are just asterisks to be clear as you move forward and you consider any one of these techniques. The issue of being clear about how the feedback you're going to receive will be used is extremely important. There is a very prevalent undercurrent to some of these meetings and activities that if you don't quickly make it clear how information will be used, whether it's decision-making or simply informational, or it'll be rolled up and considered by a different group. Entities, whether at a public meeting, town hall, or advisory committee, will carry their own assumptions forward in absence of clear guidance as to how information might be used in any one of these forums. And that can cause frustration. It can cause assumptions to be crafted throughout a process, and then it can rear its head at any point where different groups, different individuals felt that what they were doing and the time they were spending would be used in a certain way that you certainly didn't have the intention to use it that way. So one of the best tools to be able to address that right up front and be very clear, and as Malcolm mentioned, transparency is key, is the use of something like a charter or a bylaws or a rules of engagement document. And in that way, you can avoid some of this miscommunication up front. It's out there for everybody to say. It's very clear. It also addresses frequently ground rules and how folks are going to be communicating in any forum, how if there's a neutral facilitator, how that facilitator will operate, how information will be ultimately used or collated. So that's something to keep in mind. Additional things to address and to keep in your back pocket as you think about engaging in it or utilizing any one of these techniques is making sure you have the right people at the table. This is always something that's hard to do in this field, but if there is one particular entity, stakeholder group, or vocal representative of a particular sector, you certainly want to have them at the table, engage with you up front, early in the process, so any questions or assumptions or clarifications can be done early, so you aren't halfway or three-quarters of the way down a process where perhaps a CCP is coming together to address funding issues, and all of a sudden a particular interest rears its head and says, well, I have different points of view and I wasn't invited. So that's something everybody wants to certainly avoid. So how you reach out at the front end of a process is very important. And again, that's where that transparency rule really comes to play. Reach out often and aggressively and get those players in. It's better to have them early than have to have them rear later on and show concern. Lastly, I'll conclude the concept of tools and things to keep in mind with the issue of conflict. It's something that a lot of organizations and communities avoid, thinking it's a bad thing, and it can be bad if not properly handled. But if it is expected in a back and forth and appropriate discussion and controlled ground rule-based dialogue to allow in some cases, there will be a lot of emotion at a meeting, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of how you control it, how you frame it, and how you allow it to be communicated in a fair way across different sectors and different individuals at any one particular meeting, so it is channeled appropriately, it's heard, it is noted, and then ultimately can be addressed in notes or potential fixes or changes down the road. When the public is heard and entities are heard, that tends to be half the battle sometimes, because sometimes that sense of disenfranchisement comes forward, and when they do feel like they've at least been heard, and then they understand the ground rules and process as to how those comments and concerns will be addressed, whether directly or indirectly, that does very much tend to calm the situation down somewhat and allow a proactive engagement and dialogue process to take shape. So with that, I'll hand it back to our moderator, Sharon.
Well, thank you both and everybody for that. I wanted to turn to Scott and Linda to see if you had any comments or anything to add to what Malcolm or Adam have already talked about.
Not offhand. I think this was sort of stated, but there's different ways to engage the community, and one is, I think just creating a mechanism to listen and learn from the community on their perspectives of what you're doing, your services, there's another type of engagement that's really about getting them to understand and navigate the system better, because we often get stuck in our own lexicons and jargon of how we talk about things, and so just helping them be better able to navigate the system is another sort of activity. And then finally, how do you engage the community in meaningful ways programmatically, where they're partners in programs and just solutions that you bring, interventions. And in order to have those programs on target, I think you really have to start with that listening piece to really understand what the needs are. And there's some real powerful things that happen when you form those types of strong relationships with community members, where you really understand in a more nuanced and better way the depth and breadth of the issues that you're trying to solve.
Great, thank you, Scott.
I can tell you it resonated with me when Malcolm mentioned, don't be afraid of conflict. I think that when you're merging, the governmental with, the community, it's an enormous shift. And with that comes, the governmental side of things, which is, sometimes rigid, sometimes, immovable, and the community's, desire to do things differently. And I think that, in its very essence, is what moves agendas forward. And so I think that's a really valuable thing. This realignment, some would say it was a super negative thing, I think actually lended itself the communities back to where they can reach out and support one another. Government simply cannot get the job done in a vacuum. And but with that merging comes, some very difficult conversation.
Great. Well, thank you to both of you. So we want to open it up for questions. I don't think we have any submitted specifically at this point, so I think what we're going to do is unmute everyone. If you can please keep your phone muted when you
You see a lot of
when if you're not speaking. That way we pull out on the background noise. And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead and finish. I'll unmute him, but that's the kind of noise we're going to get if we want to unmute it.
Oh, well, that's fine. So just to make sure everybody heard that. So we're unmuting everyone so that you can ask questions. And please make sure you're muted if you're not speaking. Otherwise, we get lots and lots of background noise. And if that occurs, then we'll have to mute everybody and go back to the Q&A pod to submit questions. You can still submit questions through the Q&A pod. Feel free to do that. But you can also just ask some questions now as we unmute everybody.
Oh, I have sunscreen.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So we can hear everybody at this point. So does anybody have a question or a comment?
This is Adam. We have talked about different tools and systems, and I'm wondering, as we talk about tools and approaches and things to keep in mind, if anybody has had some experiences doing this in your jurisdictions, what are some of the takeaways or best practices that you've experienced? And love to hear, Scott and Linda, if you want to join in, if not anyone else.
So we have a question that someone just submitted that is for communities that haven't started any community partnerships on this topic. Where would be a good starting point?
So can you repeat the question for communities that haven't
Sure.
started? Yeah.
Yeah, for communities who have not started any community partnerships on this, where would be a good starting point for them if they haven't started?
You know, I'm doing some work right now in Ohio, and we're Lucas County, Ohio, and they're right now and they have some community partnerships, but what they decided to do is really talk to the clients and families. This is on the juvenile side, but this could also apply on the adults criminal justice side. Talk to your clients about, your probationers about when they get support and when things are going well, where do they get it? And that can begin a process of mapping who are the community supports out there that you should get to know. And then asking the question, what are the needs? Where are there gaps? Because that, using some data, getting some qualitative data like that will tell you, A, who are the assets in the community that you should be partnering with, and B, what are the needs? So I usually like to try to go right to the source, because if you're going to later engage the community, if you just try to do it at a community forum and say, hey, we'd like you to be involved in serving the criminal justice population, who's to say that their ideas are really going to fit the needs? And so this is one methodology of beginning to map out assets in the community in ways that really address the needs that you're identifying. You could also do the same thing with probation officers. What are the unmet needs? If you need help on a caseload, what are the things that you need help with? And that helps. I've always felt that if you reach out to the community and you don't have a meaningful way to engage them, they're going to lose interest pretty quickly. It's sort of like inviting someone for turkey dinner before you've even thawed out the turkey. They don't want to wait 2 days and then you got to start cooking it for 4 hours. You got to have a little bit more together before you can meaningfully sort of engage the community.
All right, thank you. So we've got a couple more questions. Well, actually, the response to your response, Scott, was really helpful. It seems like that would be the best starting point. And so now we go back to a question that someone's asked. And so, Scott or Linda, any statistics that you know of how local community restorative justice programs are working? How prevalent are they, and are they effective? Seems like a great way to involve the community.
Linda, I'm happy, but if you want to tag team and do this one, I could. Do you have anything?
I can tell you that, from my perspective as a chief in Fresno, we had a, victim reconciliation program there, and only on the juvenile side, but it was one that was widely utilized, and I think involved the community. I think it is an excellent delivery system that utilizes both the victim and the offender together and minimizes the penetration into the criminal justice system. We've seen really great results with that. I know there are conversations in other communities that have moved to the adult system moreover, but I have not really had much experience that since I've taken this job.
Yeah, and I'll just add that you know, balanced and restorative justice was sort of our first frame for engaging the community, and I think there's two prongs to that. And one is that Linda mentioned is, you know, how do you, you know, engage the stakeholder of victims in powerful ways that are both transformative, not just for the victim, but for the offender. So that's a great, BARGE provides a great framework. And then there's the community capacity building piece, and also, you know, trying to address community harm through restorative justice practices is an excellent way to, and a powerful way to engage the community, because again, you find out there's the goodwill in the community that want to provide opportunities for offenders to make amends. And when you can do that, I mean, it's a lot better for a community than to have to ask the taxpayer just to pay, you know, for 3 hots and a cot to lock someone up. Where's the accountability there when you can, you know, actually work with the community to provide opportunities to reconcile things at that level.
Great, thank you. Now, I know there's 57 people on this webinar, so somebody probably has a question you're dying to ask. So if you have one, please ask it, or you can send it through the Q&A pod.
So, while people are thinking, I just wanted to throw something else in, and Scott touched on it. One way to kind of addressing the question that might be in some people's mind, we outlined a diversity of tools and kind of which tool to use for what. That comes up a lot in our work, and it really, I mean, the easy answer to that is it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So Scott kind of talked about the kind of the 3 phases or 3, I guess 3 phases or 3 reasons to engage the community. One is to, you know, listen and learn. Another is a kind of an education function, help the community understand the process, understand the issues, understand how they can plug in. And then there's the whole programmatic element, you know, understanding what programs work, what don't work, and engaging with community members who will be served by those programs or community-based organizations who will be implementing those programs. So it becomes clearer once you decide what you're trying to, you know, kind of the question you're trying to ask at the time. And you, if you know what question you're trying to ask, it will become clear, you know, kind of who you ask it of, and also how to engage.
Great. So we have 2 questions, or a comment. First is, community engagement is key to successful realignment. We need to invest a small amount of money into what I call community capacity development that can be used to ramp up public-private partnerships with community and faith-based organizations that can provide needed services, many times at no cost to the counties. Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure what the last part of it means, but got it. Okay. So then a question. Given budgets are always constrained, are there online tools to engage the public, other ways to maximize budgets to get the most input for the least dollars? Scott or Linda, anything you want to comment on there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot stated there. So both those comments I think are really good, and maybe Linda, you could end with. I'll just say a quick piece, but Linda, you could end because I think in that first question, there's sort of a reference to sort of a maybe funding to support community efforts, and one of the things that I recognized early on through community partnerships is that everyone has their own pot of money. I mean, oftentimes your community partners want you to sort of share some of the resources, which was something that I did willingly when I, realized the value added. But also, each partner brings to the table something that really becomes a matchable either service or there's funding, there's common goals. So if you have, maybe it's a faith-based organization, maybe it's a workforce organization, they come to the table with their own funding that then can be merged with yours in ways where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And the other piece to it is, whether particularly in more formal agencies that you're partnering with, they might have entitlement funds that then you can build programs and solutions around. So that cross-system work can often be a way to add resources.
And I guess, Scott, thanks for the handoff. For instance, the CCP is funded in a way that the brokering of those funds is absolutely county-centric. And but what I am seeing in county over county over county is the engagement and the involvement of CBOs. With that said, there's always opportunities to engage further budget efforts from the state, and I think you do that through your legislator or the governor's office. I think we've had some overtures. I can tell you that it's been the administration's hope that CCPs are doing the engagement county by county.
And I just wanted to address the question about online tools. And the answer is yes. More and more there are online tools being developed that kind of go beyond just posting something on a website, different ways for people to weigh in, etc. At the end of the brief, we've listed some additional resources, websites that people can go to get additional resources. I want to call the first one, which is the California Institute for Local Government, and they have a lot of good kind of handbooks, and I think they have a brief on online tools.
Great, thank you. So Douglas, did you want to ask your question now that you're unmuted?
Sure. It's just a quick question. I was working with CDCR with in-custody treatment, and we used to have significant support both for mandating aftercare and financing it in the community. But since I retired, I'm to understand that almost all of that is evaporated, both the mandating of it and the supporting of it. It sounds like a lot of things were handed to the counties with realignment, and it was expected that the counties were going to prioritize the things that work, and we know that aftercare works. And treatment in custody without aftercare actually makes them worse, more likely to recidivate. But I'm hearing that the counties are not necessarily prioritizing that. They only have limited dollars, like you guys have been saying this whole time. And drug treatment is not the highest priority, and it hasn't been mandated by anything in realignment. So not sure where the policymakers are on this subject. I'm not sure how that might be prioritized, and if not, then return to the drawing board on realignment, or I'll just let you answer. I'm reading myself.
I think I'm happy to touch on that. I don't think you'll see a policy from the state back to the counties. I think that it is a county-by-county effort. You originally, in your question, alluded to CDCR and historically what occurred in terms of moving away from treatment. I think that's accurate. I think we're seeing now a emergence of treatment in custody and that softer handoff you referenced. But you know, it's ongoing. I think they're looking at reentry centers that are associated with treatment that had gone on in custody, and then hand the soft handoff out into the communities. And I know that the state is working as fast as they can to sort of revamp those. In terms of county policy, the state demanding that or reinventing realignment, I don't foresee that on the horizon.
Well, and I can comment, if I wish Kathy Jett were on the call with us, because she's obviously an expert on the substance use side, but you know, you may be aware that with the changes in Medicaid with the new Affordable Care Act, that there will be substantial changes in California with a different level of services offered than we've had in the past. So we have, I think most would say, virtually nothing in terms of Medicaid reimbursement for any of these services, and the state's now in the process of doing a major expansion, you know, and this is all based on ACA, but California being really, I think, a leader around the reforms on the Medicaid side means that we're going to be able to provide a lot more. Now we have a shortage of providers statewide also, so that's not going to be a simple thing, but I think this is, you know, the juxtaposition of realignment with the ACA is offering us some tremendous opportunities here now that offenders are now eligible for Medi-Cal simply by income, where before they were not. And so that's a significant change in what's going to be available to offenders. And I know that everyone welcomes this significant change around substance use disorders and the kinds of services that will be reimbursed, and that we really have a continuum of care in that area. And Jerry, I think I saw that you were, Jerry Wingard, that you were on the line. Did you want to comment on anything around that? Because I know you guys are working on something. Oh. Jerry, I think you have to enter your audio pin to talk. So, oh, go ahead, Adam.
Just a quick thought, just to echo on what I think Scott mentioned, and Linda also, about we've heard some thoughts on this call regarding how to get started, how to pay for it, and some things along those lines. And something that, working with Sharon and others, Malcolm and I, we've seen that this issue of leveraging is really important. Community-based groups really do want to participate in the process, and to become, as I think, Scott, it was you that mentioned, the ability to have a system like this engagement become greater than the sum of its parts. The leveraging benefit is something to really keep in mind, to be able to take what little time, energy, and money may be there from the government side, and then engage and partner with and build those relationships with those community-based groups. More than not, it has been seen that they really want to participate, and once given that ability to become linked with government in the problem-solving process through some of these tools and systems we've talked about, it does create a real positive environment to be able to make some of these systems happen, even with sometimes little funding when everybody pitches in. So just a thought as you consider starting one.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Well, we're right at our time to end, so I really want to acknowledge and thank Adam and Malcolm for their putting together not only the brief and doing the hard work for interviewing folks and all that, but also being with us today to talk about the brief. And let me put up the, I have to have Marisa help me advance my slides here. So there's, up on the screen now is where you can find the brief if you're interested. And again, it did go out with the webinar announcement. And so we appreciate both of them doing that, and particularly Linda and Scott too, for Linda particularly because of her role and her perspective from that broader point of view, and Scott and his multiple roles over time in doing a number of things. So thank you to both of you, and thank you to all of you who participated. And again, this audio and the PowerPoint will be available on the Cal Forward website, so you can hear it later and see the PowerPoint, and you can also then refer that to other people if you think they might be interested. So again, thank you to everyone, and everyone have a great day.